Good morning. Nice of you guys to drop by.
What a piece of junk. What are you talking about?
Don't be too proud of this technological terror you've constructed.
Look, don't worry. Everything's gonna be fine. Trust me.
I don't know what all this trouble is about, but I'm sure it must be your fault. Don't get technical with me.
This bickering is pointless.
Don't everybody thank me at once.
I don't know where you get your delusions, laser brain.
I'm glad you're here to tell us these things.
How
could you even say that?
I got a bad feeling about this.
Well, come on.
Everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
Would you get going, you pirate?
Get in there, you big furry-o! I don't care what you smell!
I'm getting too old for this sort of thing.
If what you've told me is true, you will have gained my trust.
I like the sound of that.
Get a shuttle ready.
I don't know. Fly casual.
Shuttle Tydirium, what is your cargo and destination?
Transmission commencing.
Hello, this is your captain speaking. This is Jim Chadwick, also known as Hey Chadwick on the internet forums. You are flying on Shuttle Tydirium route to the moon of Endor. If you look out your left side window, you will see Alderaan, where the average temperature at the moment is 60,000 Fahrenheit. Next to me is Phil Mead, our co-pilot. Say hello, Phil.
Welcome aboard the shuttle, everyone. As per standard Imperial safety regulations, please give your full attention to the safety instructions given by the cabin crew protocol droid.
J-Bot.
Yeah, anybody stands up during the flight, they get a blaster. Anybody wants food during the flight, they get a blaster. You know how this goes.
And if you've got any technical problems at all, please see Jake Freed, who is our chief engineer.
That's right. Jake Freed here. We've got the main drive unit purring like a kitten, or like a Wookiee, rather.
Actually, also, Jake, I hate to tell you, but our last flight was a bunch of school kids returning from a field trip, and it was the end of it, and they had to recharge all their devices. And we got our gonk droid out to help with the recharging of the devices, because it was seriously draining the engines. And, I mean, kids these days, they got freaking electronic everything. But the gonk droid's acting up a little bit, so I might need you to take a look at that later on.
Okay, you got it. I'll be on standby.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining the Shuttle Tydirium. Personally, I'm excited tonight because for the first time in 3 weeks, I got to play games tonight. I had a number of family issues kind of taking up my time, and I got to go out and play tonight. And something really exciting happened to me. I'll be quick about it. But we were playing Heroes of the Aturi Cluster, and since it's been so long since I've been in the store, there's a few of these guys who don't play any X-Wing except Heroes of the Aturi Cluster, when I show up. And they hadn't played in a while, and they were all waiting for me. So I've been trying to get ready for Mission 2 for one of our future podcasts, but I just went ahead and we did this mission, and at one point, we had a random elite show up, and we randomly pull out the card, and it is an elite TIE Phantom.
Ooh.
I hated it. I was so upset about it. And of course,
there was a lot of cursing involved in that, just so you guys... His clean-cut image is just a show.
And then our A-Wing zips past it, and who's the nearest one in range but me and my Y-Wing, and it comes barreling down. But of course, with a random die roll, I mean, most of the time the AI is really good for you who haven't tried it. But if you roll a certain way, let's say like a 4 straight, and you're supposed to end up on an asteroid, what you can do is turn. Like if you roll, let's say a 3 straight, and you land on an asteroid, it would say do a bank one way or the other to avoid it. But if you go on a 4 straight, it would land on an asteroid. You can't bank 4 bank. And so basically, you just get stuck on the rock. And so this sucker got stuck on a rock within range of my proton torpedoes. And I lit that puppy up. I was so excited. I rolled like max damage, and I think it was like 2 crits, 2 hits. He couldn't evade anything, and I blew that TIE Phantom to pieces. It was amazing. It was high excitement X-Wing.
That sounds pretty fantastic.
That's a rain on your parade.
A lot of fist bumps going on there.
I might rain on your parade. Aren't you supposed to change the bank to the closest, use a bank, but like the closest possible speed, if not the same speed? Is it if the same speed
Well,
is
but
in
it was my understanding that you can only change the speed or the banking aspect by 45 degrees. So, say a bank would turn into a turn, or a straight would turn into a bank, but I didn't think you could actually change speed and bank.
Yeah, the way we understand it, without going into crazy detail, is that if it's an obstacle, it's 45 degrees one way or the other. If it's a board edge, it's speed. It's kind of the way we understood it. So
maybe I have it wrong.
He was kind of stuck. Yeah, he was kind of stuck either way, to be honest with you, the way this asteroid kind of lined up. Is that 3, he's on the asteroid, 4, he's on the asteroid, and he basically squared on this asteroid really, really good. he beached himself really, really well on this thing.
It was a beautiful moment.
Nice.
All right, that's just kind of what was going on with me, and I'm excited about playing for the first time in a while.
But I'm gonna jump in here. That kind of joy and enthusiasm, quite frankly, is something that I love about the casual side of this, because I mean, this might sound strange, but if I'm in a tournament and I blow up your Phantom, I'm gonna feel really bad if I'm fist pumping and dancing and like all over the place. But when you're in a casual game, and especially something where it's cooperative or just friendly back and forth, you can absolutely like just let loose on how much exuberance you have on that sort of thing. It would be poor sportsmanship against another player in a tournament, but yeah, you can really lay into it and throw a few curse words and a few hand gestures its way, that sort of thing.
Right. Well, this is a family-oriented podcast here, so I won't repeat all the excitement that I actually enthused at the game store. But it was a tough match because we had a B-Wing, and it ended up facing the brunt of like 3 TIE fighters and a TIE interceptor. And it was untouched until that round, and it was blown to pieces in one round.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah. I will admit that I was the one rolling for the TIE fighters. And it was 8 attack dice with focuses around. I did not roll a miss once.
Oh.
It was all his fault. He killed somebody in one turn.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Jason. He listens.
Rough.
In fact, Jason disappeared for a bit, and one of his coworkers started getting him back into the game, and his coworker listens to the podcast and said, "Hey, Jason, you should check out this really cool podcast." He started listening to it, the Shuttle Tydirium. He goes, "Wait a second, I know that voice." And so that was pretty cool. So hi, Jason. So it was actually pretty cool. I don't think it's an easy thing to do, this Heroes of the Terry Cluster, and we might even talk later in this episode how it goes. But yeah. But I think it's time for the captain's question.
Yes, definitely.
So J-Bot, being the protocol droid, came up with the concept of pick something maybe not Star Wars, just to kind of get a good feeling of who we are. So
wait, you're going to use one of my ideas?
Let
me fasten my seatbelt.
I am, and I like this idea because I think it could really show some personality of each of us. So the question is, if you could be one superhero, who would you be? And J-Bot, since I'm taking your question and idea, I'm going to you first.
Oh, that's totally unfair.
You're going to say, otherwise you'll say, "Oh, they stole my idea."
Yeah.
Man, that's a tough call. I hate to say I'd want to be this person or not, but I'm gonna steal your question and move it in my own direction as I want to do. My favorite superhero, anybody who knows me and has known me long enough is gonna know in a heartbeat who it is. I am a Judge Dredd fan, and I have been one since I was basically too young to be buying the books. Let's put it that way. And I don't know that he's technically a superhero, but he's a comic book hero. So in my childhood mind, he was a superhero.
Now, was he a comic book before the game? Because I played Dungeons and Dragons and got Dragon Magazine, and I would always see the ads for Judge Dredd game. And I never knew if it started as a comic and became a role-playing game or vice versa. Or...
As far as I know, it started as a comic. Now, I'm not an expert. There could be somebody slamming their fist on their desk right now listening to this, but I'm fairly certain it's started.
You don't know what you're talking about.
2000 AD was the comic. It was not like Judge Dredd comic. It was more of a kind of an amalgamation of kind of short stories of different kind of characters and stuff, all set in a relatively similar universe. but he's been around for decades and decades.
All right. Well, since we're old, and not everyone is, tell us about Judge Dredd and why do you like him?
I think the idea behind Judge Dredd that I loved him for was he basically had a code, and obviously if you're even vaguely familiar with the world, you kind of understand where I'm at. But he essentially had a code, and he never changed. He was essentially this kind of faceless entity where the world could be crazy around him. Everything from people slowly disappearing piece by piece from their body to just kind of hardcore gritty sorts of street level tales, and he never changed. He was kind of the port in the storm, that kind of just bulwark that everything washed around, and it was just kind of interesting. I loved as a kid seeing how this one kind of stoic figure, this stoic personality, this unwavering kind of viewpoint on the world reacted to all this stuff, how it dealt with all these things.
But also we can say that because the Hunger Games has hit the culture, we can say it was a dystopian society.
It was vaguely dystopian.
Vaguely, it was like
it's vaguely dystopian.
It was slums. Everybody lived in slums.
Well, right. It's like I said, it's vaguely dystopian. When I think dystopian, I think equilibrium. That's to me your like classic dystopia. And I won't get into this. Is not that podcast, but when I point to people and people are like, oh, Judge Dredd, that's that crappy Stallone movie, and I tell them, I said, here's the funny part. Yes, it actually is. That's Judge Dredd. That's the world.
Actually, I saw the movie.
But Stallone, them taking his helmet off, ruins it because you never see Dredd's face. Yeah. If you want to understand,
well, yeah, it's just because it's Stallone.
Yes, Stallone. He's a big movie star. But if you want to understand kind of the real kind of truth behind it, you have to see Dredd. Like the Carl Urban, however you say his name, made it. I don't know, half a dozen years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and it is like a perfect kind of just small. I can't even think of the fancy word for it, but it's just a small microcosm of what the whole kind of comic book line was, which is one judge, two judges against essentially just a massive amount of kind of crime and violence, and how they never change, they never waver, they have a very singular purpose, and it's a self-contained movie, and it's great. And the fact that it has never even been kind of thought up by Hollywood to come out with a sequel is just heartbreaking to me. Because, I mean, I watched it probably for the 50th time just this past weekend because it's just so great. I mean, it's such a great movie. And if you haven't seen it, go watch it, find it. It's dirt cheap. It might be on Netflix. It's been on Netflix a bunch of times. It's out there. It's easy to get a hold of. It is great.
I'll say I saw the Stallone movie because I remember Judge Dredd from back in the olden days, and I thought, what the heck, I'll give it a try, and I totally was expected to be utter tripe, and it wasn't that bad. I'm saying it was great.
Are you sure it wasn't that bad?
I was actually.
It's
maybe
bad.
I was desperate, but I was expecting it to be horrible, and I actually enjoyed watching it.
Were you?
It was just a few years ago. I might have been drunk. It is quite possible.
Yeah, it's the toughest fight I have with people is that it is Judge Dredd. Like the world of just goofiness and craziness, that's also there in the books. If all you think it is just kind of hardcore like violence and crime, like you've missed thousands upon thousands of pages of the comic book. It's like any comic; it goes all over the place. But
yeah,
that world had a very well done version of the characters' costumes, and it was very true to the comic in the costumes and kind of setting, but it fell apart in the story is really what it did. They wanted to throw too much into it. It was Hollywood. What do you expect? That's why the new one is so great, because it's just two characters for the most part, and just plows through with that. And that's how the comics was a very small contained storylines.
Right.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to go to my co-pilot. Phil.
Okay, so I had to think for a little bit here, so it's good that Jonathan had some time. But I did come up with a superhero that I like. I don't know if I would want to be the superhero, necessarily speaking, but the Tick. Who knows the Tick?
Oh, jeez.
Oh, yes. I know the Tick.
I mean, how could you not love the Tick? He's awesome.
He's awesome.
Spoon.
What was his sidekick? The moth or something?
His name is
Arthur. And he was a giant like moth that
Yeah,
everyone thought he was
I
a
think he was
rabbit.
like some. Yeah, he had like these eyes that make him look like a rabbit, and the ears make him look like a rabbit.
Yeah, it was
I
really
always
long.
thought it was a rabbit.
Yeah, I guess those are supposed to be antennae.
Yes, they were supposed to be moth antennae, and he was very, very miffed that everyone kept calling him a bunny or a rabbit. That was genius.
You know, I do so from that show. There was one thing that just has cracked me up continuously every time I think about it. One of the other superheroes was this woman dressed up as a maid, and her name was American Maid.
That sounds like a character I made for a video game called Made in China. Like Maiden, like maiden, and then China.
So she was nationalistic and awesome and kicked butt, but she was American Maid. She was dressed up as a maid. Like, it's time to clean up the trash, And she was hysterical. It was like American Maid. I mean, it's just too dang funny. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. So you liked him because he was funny, amusing, entertaining?
Yeah, I think he was a good sort of comical superhero. Just managed to solve all his problems with goofiness and just sheer brawn. And
so is he like for those who don't know his powers, i.e. me, like what were his
he was
powers?
I think he was just like really strong.
And I think impervious to damage.
Maybe impervious, I don't know. Yeah.
And pretty stupid, pretty obtuse.
Very dumb.
Yeah.
But pure-hearted. Very, very, very dumb. Like, it can't be overstated.
All right, so Jake, I know Harley Davidson's not a comic book that I know of, so
that's true. So let's see. Now, I guess if I had to be a superhero,
who would you want to be?
Was the question who I wanted to be, or who my favorite would be, or who my favorite is?
Well, if it's different, tell us both.
All right. Well, I feel like if I had to choose to be a superhero, I'm kind of split between two, and one. It's actually interesting. One is of the DC universe, and one is in the Marvel universe.
Finally, some area more.
Them's fighting words right there.
Yeah, I know. I'm crossing borders. I'm the Daywalker. If I was going with my Marvel choice, I would actually choose the Nightcrawler, who is a kind of, in my mind, kind of one of the secondary secondary X-Men characters. The reason I would choose the Nightcrawler is because he looks like a spider monkey almost. He's like blue, he's green, he's got a tail, and he is very acrobatic. He can climb walls and all that stuff. But the real reason I like him so much is that he actually has my favorite superpower of all, which is instant teleportation. So,
bam.
Exactly. Had your question been, Jake, what is your favorite superpower that you wish you could have? It would have been instant teleportation. But since it's actually talking about superheroes, it's Nightcrawler. I absolutely love that whole thought of, hey, I'm going to go and just warp behind that guy and kick him in the head and then warp back and and in combat that seems great. But also practically, I mean, I would love to go down and visit Phil Mead in the city just for a day and not have to drive 6 hours. And I could come back home, without any problems and no rush hour traffic. That sounds amazingly practical to me.
Jake, I know you. You're going to gain like 50 pounds from lack of movement.
Yeah, you're right. And then think about how awesome skydiving would be, though. You don't need a plane. You just teleport into the atmosphere and then just drop down. And then right before you hit the ground, you just go over, I don't know, like an ocean, just plop your, make yourself stop the momentum somehow. Although that actually sounds like it would be dangerous, so maybe I wouldn't do that. But other than that, yes, the instant
I approve of this particular option. I would say.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
So that's my one. And then just if I had to choose a DC character, I'm actually not as familiar with DC superheroes and superpowers, but I don't know if anyone has instant teleportation, but I really do like the character Green Lantern. And he's the character who kind of has this green ring, and the green ring is something that by using his power of imagination, he can create all sorts of objects out of his ring. He can, use it to fly. He can use it to create a giant hammer, or a monster or a shield, or whatever he can think of comes out of that ring. And it's just this kind of amorphous energy that can create solids, which I think is really cool. So I like that power as well.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I have to say, I'm excited somebody picked, within the Marvel DC, because that's really more what I'm familiar with, and there is the divide, and I'm really more of a Marvel guy. I admit I'm probably breaking waves here, but you're making waves. Because a lot of like superheroes, Superman is probably the most boring superhero overall. It's like, oh, you can't do crap to him, and if he loses, he'll just make the planet go backwards and go back in time, and right. It's just like, I don't like. But Batman's okay, etc. But I'm more of a Marvel, and I read the old X-Men. So the old X-Men where not all Angel and Beast and that stuff, but the new guys who came in, Wolverine and Colossus and everyone, and that was my comic. Now, I have neighbors and friends who have read Avengers and Captain America and etc. But to me, the X-Men were where it was at. I read the X-Men for years, and my favorite is Nightcrawler.
You're kidding me.
I am not. I love Nightcrawler. He is awesome. And even they had the whole Nightcrawler one-off where he kind of got stuck in some weird teleport BAMF thing and got sent to some crazy universe. I had all those. And in fact, that even started when he was in Poughkeepsie, New York, which I lived outside of Poughkeepsie for a number of years of my formative childhood development. So I love that kind of area of New York, and I love Nightcrawler. He was wisecracking, humorous. He was romantic. He was always trying to chase the ladies. He would like sword fight, one in each hand and one in his tail. He would be bamfing around, cracking jokes, swinging from things. He was like, I loved him. He was awesome. Like, to me, Nightcrawler, like everyone always says, oh, Wolverine, oh, snake it. But to me, like, Nightcrawler was awesome because he was optimistic and romantic and funny, and just his abilities were awesome. He was a mutant. He was all blue and could hide, but he was also had joined the circus with his mutant powers before he'd been grabbed up as a superhero. So he was super dexterous and climb on tight ropes, and I thought he was the bomb, which is hysterical that you say that, because that's Nightcrawler was so cool to me. He was the best, and it was a secondary character. He wasn't Cyclops or Storm or Wolverine, but he was awesome. He was the coolest superhero to me.
Jim, let me just say that I know you being captain and me being the engineer, we don't always see eye to eye. You push my engines to the limit. You push them to the limit quite a bit. You invite people on our cruise that I don't necessarily appreciate, those kids. But I got to tell you, I don't think I've ever felt closer to you than this.
Oh, I know. I think I'm going to order those parts you've been wanting,
Well, that would be just fantastic.
Oh, those ionic motivators. I think I'm going to order them. So,
and if you could just throw in a couple dozen more restraining bolts, that would be really good.
Well, with J-Bot around, we might need them.
He just keeps wearing through them. There's one restraining bolt is not enough.
He needs about 3. Oh, excellent. Okay, excellent. So that's Captain's question, and I guess we're going to go on to our main topic now. So I hope everybody enjoyed that question, the odd non-Star Wars question. So I had fun with it.
Yeah,
I did too. I loved it.
All right.
It's always good to get outside the regular circle of things.
Yeah. Our main topic tonight is building a casual X-Wing scene, because we're here to really kind of promote casual X-Wing and playing to have fun and non-tournament. And we've gotten a lot of feedback from people out there like, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one. This is awesome. I like playing this way. Or, I went to the local store and all these guys, they just wanted to beat me over the head with their tournament lists. And it was, I even read someone on the FG forums who said that they just, their soul was crushed by playing too many tournament lists, and they were going to sell their X-Wing stuff. And I was just like, oh. And that was the day I saw that. And that later that day was when the FFG, Fly Casual article came out. They're like, oh, why are people even doing this? I'm like, why have you? I saw this. Someone posted this, and they meant it. This is why they actually posted that FFG news article, because people out there, they are upset about the game. So I think we should talk about building a casual X-Wing scene. And I first started playing X-Wing, and there were a number of people who kind of got in the general area. We played for a while, but I live on one side of town, and that's where maybe most half dozen people showed up, and a store opened up on the other side of town where most live, and it just died in my area. And I quit for a year. I quit for almost a full year because there just wasn't anyone there. And one of the other gamers got into it. I found out he really liked Star Wars, and it turns out, we played a casual game, and the next week he had spent $200 on a whole bunch of X-Wing stuff. Was really into it. And we built up the X-Wing scene for the entire Charlotte area, and I think I got some advice to kind of help people out there who either need to, one, build a scene, or two, build a casual scene if there already is a scene.
Right.
So do you guys, Philip and Jake, since you're not in North Kakalaki here with Javon and I, do you guys ever get out and get to see people much? Are you more online players, or?
The play that I do is typically either online or with friends. I did play some games in New York City. There's a decent X-Men community that I don't really take advantage of that I probably should. And they're a competitive community, and I think there's games every week, at least every week. I think mostly in Brooklyn. Some in Manhattan, closer to me. Brooklyn is kind of like another world. It takes like an hour to get there. I don't always want to go.
Yeah, commute can be rough because even for us on the south side of town, we've got one road and traffic is really, really bad, and it can take an hour just to drive. Without traffic would be 30 minutes. It can double the time with traffic on rush hour.
Right.
Yeah, the traffic down here is horrendous. Not this is a traffic podcast or anything, but the distance, I can give you kind of a perspective. I drive the same road basically every morning, and it's 25 minutes from my house to work. Coming back in the afternoon, it's about 45 minutes. On a Friday, it's an hour and a half, just to give you an idea. And these are country roads. This is not through the city. That's just how far backed up it can be. And that's without a wreck. That's just stupid people, basically.
Right.
Yeah, as far as I go, I'm mostly on Vassal, mostly online playing. Back when I was closer to Phil, I would actually go with him a couple times in Westchester, New York. We used to play a couple times. That was fun, kind of seeing the scene there. But would you say that was more casual or more competitive when we were playing there, Phil?
In Westchester, I'd say it's more casual. Those guys did play in tournaments.
I thought those too.
But the scene at that game club that we used to play at, it was more casual. Like guys would play epic scale games very often, or try scenarios that different people wrote up. So, and they still do that. That's Battle for Salvation. Right. If there's any listeners out there in the Westchester County area, look up Battle for Salvation. That's a gaming group that does X-Wing in that area, and they often do casual style. It's pretty mixed. Like if you want to play a 100-point game, it's no problem for sure. But if you're interested in other stuff too, they also do that.
Right. Agreed.
We might want to see about trying to create a more casual Vassal scene, which I didn't do Vassal just because when I tried it was early and it was horrible. But from what I understand, I've improved it a lot just from listening to this Coming Villainy podcast. Muan was on, and from what I understand, it's improved. So I might want to try it. But my experience, I guess I've done is all on the actual physical stores and etc. And I think it's something dealing with Vassal is something we should probably also try to look into in the future, because I think there are a lot of other people out there that could do casual online, and we can try to build that scene. I think it'd be actually pretty exciting. But I think there can be a difference between there is no local scene, and but there's tournament players. And so I want to start off just saying if you're at a local, if you're in an area and there's not quite an organized local scene, how do you actually kind of grow it? Mm-hmm. Well, if you can find a local store that's close to you that is willing to kind of say, yeah, we want to make this night to be an X-Wing night, and we want to sell X-Wing products and kind of check with the store owner to say, yeah, this night is good. Because if your one night is Tuesdays and that's when the Magic the Gathering players come in and storm, and your store owner makes more money off Magic and doesn't want to really support you guys for X-Wing, you don't want to go on that night. So check with the owner just to kind of make sure that night that's good for you is a good night for them. Because you really want the store on your side, because the more you can build the scene, the more they'll sell minis. So make sure, and then once you do, try to set up on a regular basis. Like if you say Tuesdays or we do Thursdays, and we go to our particular store, if you're trying to grow it for a while, you've got to be there every week. So you can't try to start it and then say, well, but then I'm going to be gone for half of next month.
Yeah,
that does not work. That will just be terrible. It'll be worse. It would just delay your starting, rather than that. So when you do set some things up, you've got to be there. But how do you kind of advertise? And what I did was I went online and looked up. I googled Star Wars recruitment posters, and there's a million of them. And there's like, Leia Organa in a nice little flight suit. And there's Imperial ones, join the Empire, defend the Empire. And there are like 100 recruitment posters out there. And you can just print it out and then tape on another printed out thing to say, such and such store, such and such game night, this time, we building an X-Wing scene, and just be there. You can put it in. If you want to even go to the Barnes and Noble and try to glue it to the side of where they sell the minis,
right?
Or if you want to do it, if you're in the store, our store is split. We've got the where they sell the product and they've got gaming tables. We're lucky to have a very big store, and putting it, check with the owner, putting up posters where they sell the minis, and then posters up on like maybe a main bulletin board on where they've got kind of what's going on, and putting it all over so that people can see this night, this time. That is a really good way to do it. Now, if there is not a Facebook group for your local area, create one. Now, even if you've got like maybe there's one or two stores and they each have their own Facebook page or whatever, create one for your greater metro area. Like we've got numerous game stores, and some have even popped up playing X-Wing since I've built the scene. And I do not mean to slight any of them. And I love my local store, and I want to support them, but there's a bunch, and I do not mean to slight any of them. And creating one we have like Charlotte area X-Wing, and putting it something really freaking simple so that when some guy moves to your city and he's trying to play X-Wing and he wants to he Googles it, like Charlotte X-Wing, boom, that pops up. And that's what you want. Don't make it like Mom Martha's Militia or something.
Right. It's gotta be Googleable.
Yes, you want to
Googleable.
Yeah,
exactly. That's what
I
I said.
This is going to be a shameless plug. But if you're listening to this podcast, like, jump on the group, our Facebook group, and throw it out on there too. Like, hey, we started a group for our area in this specific place, and point people. Because from what I've seen, you want to make as many connections as possible. You want to put it on if you've got your Facebook group, put it on the Fantasy Flight forums. Put it, on any Facebook group that's, not some random one that people are going to look at you strange for. But you want to get as many eyes on it as possible, because it's funny how many people have come into our store, the one Jim and I play at, and don't realize it's there. And you have to tell them, like, oh yeah, just go to our Facebook page. Well, what's it called? Charlotte area X-Wing. And it's like, well, why didn't I see it anywhere else? And it's probably because they weren't actually going to the Fantasy Flight places, or we just didn't do a good job, or Jim, really it's Jim's fault, didn't do a good job of pushing it to as many possible places as we could. But getting them there and not focusing on like, hey, we're the PBKW X-Wing group. Like, no, it needs to be, the whole city, so that everybody can kind of see what's going on at each store. And unless your city is massive, where it's like, it's 3 hours to get from the north end to the south end, you need to include it, because we get people traveling from all of the stores when they see that an event's going on, and the stores start to kind of, in a sense, work together, so that they're not, cannibalizing each other's fans and players. So they're like, oh, we're going to move ours to Wednesday night or Saturday night to avoid, people having to choose between the two stores. And I think that's important for why you need the group to be big and expansive, so people can see what's going on across the whole area.
And we have Facebook groups for particular stores, and we have the greater area X-Wing one. And some people join some people join others. But we started off a year and 3 months ago, 3 years and 4 months ago, with just two of us. It was just, Josh, myself, and then J-Bot joined. We now have 170 people on the Facebook page.
Wow, that's impressive.
Nice.
And, and not everyone mingles, but we've got even people from local areas. In Charlotte, we've got Asheville people. We've got, Raleigh people. We've got down in South Carolina people that kind of all will join to know what's going on in the other scenes of tournaments, etc., or events going on. And so it kind of creates a greater overall area. And so even if you've got local store ones, create even one for your greater area, because you just don't know. There could be another store, there could be people who move to the area, there's all sorts of stuff, and so that helps. So that to me, getting that Facebook page, I have to say, I've tried Google Plus, there's just not enough people there. Facebook is really the way to go. I hate to admit it, and I pretty much mostly do gaming stuff on Facebook, but it's there. So, and the last bit kind of for how to build it, if you're trying to build the scene, also kind of bleeds into for tournament stuff. But basically, do demo games and do fun games that are visually pleasing. Like, if you want to do the trench run and you print out all the stuff that I've got for my thing, and you can build the Death Star, and you've got like this 6 by 8 foot table, and you've got things going on, and you can kind of use your Bluetooth speakers or get permission from the store and play some Star Wars music while you've got these big epic ships on a big epic fight going on. Like, if you set things up very simply for these scenarios, whether it's demo games of just a few ships, or whether you've got the trench run, and you run these demo games and you play the music and people come wandering over, whoa, what's all this? It looks pretty exciting. If they look at the table for more than 5 seconds, here, you take these ships. This is how you play. Roll the dice. This is what you do. And just throw people into the game, and sucker them in, and basically show them the fun, crazy stuff. It's Star Wars and ships, and you throw dice and get people involved. And it works for demo games, and it can also work for regular tournament players, because I have known a lot of tournament players that buy the epic ships for the cards, and they always think, it'd be really nice, but everybody always does that, the tournament play, blah, blah, blah. But I have had so many people, even on the Facebook, I am going to be running Epic at this particular night, in 2 weeks. And I think, I don't ever go out to the game store, but if you're doing Epic, I'm going to come out because I've got the Epic ships, and I've never used them, and I want to play my Epic ships.
Yeah, I can't really reiterate enough how that big eye-catching game, especially with epic ships, really draws people in that in a lot of ways would have no kind of interest in it. They see these, they're painted ships. I know I've gone on and on about painted ships, but they are easy to see from a long distance. Hey, these are neat. They're not just board game pieces that you pulled out of Monopoly. They look like something relatively familiar with if I'm in a gaming store or in a comic book store, and it draws people in. And they might not all play, but they'll see it, and it'll stick in the back of their head. And if you do this routinely, as Jim mentioned, you got to be there. You can't just start this and then walk away from it for a couple weeks and come back. It has to be a dedicated. You have to really want this, want the scene. But if you do this and you do enough of these eye-catching things, people start to believe, hey, these guys are having fun, and they're always here. There's always somebody here to do something with. And that's, at least for myself, was the biggest draw from the beginning was, oh my God, this is big, it's eye-catching, and there's people here. At the time, it was Jim and Josh were two guys, but it was still like, oh my God, there's actually people here playing. It's not just a hobby that I dream about and look in magazines and hear about other people with their battle reports and stuff. It's actually a physical people playing this game. And it started slow at our store. It was not an overnight phenomenon. It started with 3 of us, or I guess 2, and then 3. We got a 4th person, and then before you know it, you kind of turn around. You're like, how did we end up with 4, 5, 6 games going at one time? How did this happen?
Yeah.
I don't even know that guy. I've never met that guy. I've never played him before. And you can't. I guess the second half of this, you can't have any ego about it either. Like you got to just You got to bring it in and say, hey, this is the game. Like, this is not my game. If I'm not here, you guys got to do this. Y'all have to take control of this, and be here without us. And I know there are times when Jim won't be there, at least in the early days, where people are like, oh, I guess nothing's going on. And if you're kind of the second or third person on the scene, you got to take over. You got to step in and be like, no, every single person needs to be that you bring into this kind of collective needs to be on board with continuing to expand it. You don't want to have people just kind of turning off when the leader isn't there. You want people to come in, have fun, and almost not even know he's not there half the time, because there is no leader. There shouldn't be a leader. There should just be, people there to enjoy it and have fun. And if people see you having fun, they'll want to join in. That's just the nature.
And just like Jim said, too, kind of allowing them, if they're more than 5 seconds, giving your table a glance. Like, say, hey, pick up these ships. Why don't you roll these dice and get them in? And that really engages them, because I can tell you, even though I wasn't at a setting in like a store, with a bunch of games going on, Phil Mead came over to my house one day. And this was right after I had kind of like fallen off the whole Warhammer 40,000, painted 1,000 models, and now I'm kind of getting burned out by everything. Right. And I really wasn't in the mood for another tabletop game or anything. But he came over, he said, "Hey Jake, why don't you just check this out?" And I was like, "Well, fine, whatever. Let's sit up on the table downstairs." And he made me roll some dice, and I was just like, wait, I get to be that TIE fighter? Is that TIE fighter already painted? Why, yes, Jake, it is. I was like, cool, let me look at that. And then I was like, so we get to play it, and really that's what it's all about, Jim. I think you nailed it on the head. If they show interest, because I certainly did, and then just have them like roll the dice and see how easy it is to pick up and how fun it is to play and how much more money you want to spend than you have, on this game. It's a wonderful thing.
Right. Like Thursday night at my game store happens to be like open board game night, and they've got a bunch of store board games to play, and the Magic Gather, they're the Magic guys are there, and people kind of wander around like, oh, I just kind of came in here just to buy something, and what's going on? All stuff's crazy, and I've seen people walk back and kind of look at what we're like, look at what we're doing, and sometimes it's a guy with his kids, and sometimes the kids are like really young, and sometimes the kids are tweeners or whatever, and hey, how's it going? What's your name? Have you seen X-Men before? Oh, when you kind of explain it, you just someone you just as are looking in and like while we're playing a game and what's going on, and people seem interested, and it may only be 1 out of 3 of those people actually you see them again, or even 1 out of 4, but they see it, and you just got to kind of throw it out there. A lot of people get kind of pulled in, and there was even a bunch of these young Magic the Gathering players, late teens, early 20s, and they're kind of hanging out. But we would play like the Star Wars music every week, and they'd come in and they would laugh and they would love it. I've got one of those little easy buttons, beep beep beep, to do the sound, and they would just laugh and they would just say, I love you guys every week coming in. And if they don't play, maybe they would even play occasionally, but even if they don't, maybe they've got a friend who loves Star Wars. They say, hey, well, these guys are really fun. They play Star Wars at my store, and it's one of these things that if you pull the cool stuff and you're really open and friendly about it, because you know how it is, you walk and you see some, I don't know, crazy World War II game with these tanks and really amazing terrain, and you get these guys that are all these beards, and they're all like,
yep,
and they're unfriendly.
Yeah, you don't want to get engaged with that.
Yeah, one of the beautiful things about X-Wing, for those of us who have come from 40K backgrounds, who've come from these bigger miniature war games, besides the pre-painted figures, is you don't need an encyclopedia when you play. Right. And that's one of the biggest selling points I've tried to make to people is this little cardboard box has everything you need to play. All the rules, everything. You don't need to think anymore. You don't need to flip through book after book. And here's the thing. I love the 40K universe. I'm not going to hate on it, but we've had people in there, and I've actually had somebody come, hey, what are they playing over there? And I said, "Oh, they're looking through books. They must be playing 40K." And that person looked at me like I was odd, but everyone else who heard me, including the 40K guys, were laughing because they knew it was the truth. This is a completely different game. It's like a pamphlet. I mean, the rule book is basically a pamphlet, and that's easy to teach people. And yes, 80% of might never come back, but if you don't, and this is the second part of this, don't overbear them with rules either. Put 2 ships on the table, put 3 ships on the table, and let them shoot at each other. Don't explain stress. Don't go into all that crazy stuff. Just let them go back and forth and shoot at each other, and you'll have people hooked before you realize it. And then you can slowly feed them the more difficult to understand portions of the rules, and before you know it, you've got somebody coming back with. You see him at the counter buying a starter set, and you're like, I got him. Got him. He's
Reel him in.
Back. He's going to be back next week. And then, before you know it, the guy's got $400 worth of ships on the table, and and he's training for a tournament. And you're like, oh, I had him, and I lost him. I had him, and somewhere he went down the wrong road.
The one that got away.
I had him for a little bit.
But there's also the other degree of people who have never played games before, but they know what Star Wars is. Like I have actually met, I go to my kids go to a charter school, so it's kind of a small community, and I had to go to buy some furniture from some family, and it turns out like the wife was a Star Wars freak. Like the lady of the house loved Star Wars, and she just had movie posters and framed in expensive frames, and I never quite got around to be able to get X-Wing, but and the husband brewed his own beer, and so it was excellent because they had a kegerator and everything. I was all excited about trying to create some Star Wars, but I didn't get to get the X-Wing. But you never know, people who are non-gamers could get sucked into X-Wing. You got neighbors. You got friends that just don't play games, but they know what Star Wars is.
Yeah, X-Wing is a really accessible and recognizable IP.
Intellectual property.
The game, the game is really easy to learn to play. Like everyone's saying here, all you really need is the starter set, and you really learn pretty much all the rules that you need to know right there. And the intellectual property of Star Wars is just has such broad appeal that it makes for a really easy package for people to get into.
Yeah.
It's really one of the real real strengths of X-Wing. It's why X-Wing is as big as it is right now.
Yeah, which has become the largest miniature war game in the world, or is in the U.S. in the world.
Yeah, it's the highest selling anyway.
It has beaten 40K. It has actually knocked 40K as the war game, miniatures war game.
It's pretty impressive. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so it's gotten big.
Fast.
So there's a lot of people out there, and
it's much shorter timeline than 40K's had to do it.
Yeah, but so what do you do if you've got a scene of people that are all tournament gamers? Because that's what the kind of that's what the game is about. And I'll admit there have been people I've gotten into the game and I see them spent a couple $100, but then they just end up kind of not playing. Like for me, they go to the board games again, and then what happened? And they say, well, the really tournament guys kind of came over. I just got sick of getting my butt kicked, and I don't want to have to spend all this time looking up all these cards and upgrades and spending time in the forums and what is the super combo. And I just kind of want to play move some ships around and go pew, pew, pew and all that. And so, I've seen people lose interest in the game. And one thing I'll say is if you've got a Facebook page, whether you create it or whether there is one, and I've got a bunch of different things to try, but when you do, talk about it on the Facebook page. Drum up ideas, throw them out there. Say, I want to try this in such and such date, in such and such store, such and such time to really get it done. And I have done that. Like, I want to play Epic. I want to play Epic next week. Who wants to play Epic? And I've had people like, I never come to the store, but I would really like to come try my Epic ships. There are people out there that you might not know about that would be really into the idea. So make sure when you try something, whether you say, "Oh, I want to try the trench run," or "I want to try these different things," and so even with Epic, that's a good one because not everyone is, "Oh, I'm a tournament player," "Oh, I'm a casual player," and never the two will meet. Like, right now is actually a perfect time to start asking people what they want to do for non-tournament because the store championship season was gone through, and the regionals are all gone through, and like these guys are all into that, and all trying to do well. Then practicing, and then playing the same dang lists.
Yeah, people
and
get burned out.
Yeah,
and they're looking for something lighter and just more straight fun rather than straight competitive way to play the game.
I've known people to kind of just drop out for a while and then get back into the game tournament season and like the winter kit. But it's a perfect time to try to get people into other ideas about X-Wing, that they might not have tried before. And even just there's a lot of things you can try. I think Epic is one option to pull people in because a number of people have actually bought the Epic ships because they wanted the really cool cards in them. And like, oh, I paid $90 for a V1 title or X1 title, or they'll make these nasty comments about it. But that's not really the case because they got really cool Epic ships. If they haven't played them, you need to provide the time, the opportunity for these people to actually play. Like, say, hey, I'd really like to try Epic, or even I want to try the Epic campaign because that's a good way to learn to play Epic, is those little campaigns, and each Epic ship has, it's 4 missions, where it's really kind of 3 linked in a row, but whoever won the first one depicts which one of the second that you do. But those campaigns are actually pretty cool. They're on the 3x3, and they teach you kind of the rules about how to use the Epic ships and what are the strengths and weaknesses, and they're also actually pretty cool and fun. They're some of the best missions that FFG's done. So,
I've only played a few of the Epic campaign missions, and the ones I did were pretty good, I thought. So yeah, I would agree. These, if you got Epic ships, try to get them out on the tables. And there's other people out there. There's a lot of people who have Epic ships, and would probably be interested in getting them on the table.
And there's a little bit of things I can suggest for Epic, because a lot of people get an Epic, try it once or twice, and things either took too long, or one side smacked the other, and they're like, yeah, it's not really my thing. But some advice if you want to try to get people into Epic that I'll say is one, use generics, as many generic ships as possible. Because for one, you can't keep track of all your freaking special abilities and astromechs and etc. And all that stuff can bog the game down, and you forget about it. And two, it's just kind of thematic. They have just a whole bunch of generics flying and dying and blasting to the pieces. It's pretty fun. And there's one of the things is, well, economy of points, I want to use as many Academy TIE Fighter pilots as I can to squeeze in, 8 to 12 TIE Fighter pilots. Don't do that. Because what you see is, oh, it's PS1 time. Okay, this one guy's going to take 30 minutes to plan his moves out, or to roll his freaking dice, or to just, like, even if it doesn't make sense economically, spread out the pilot skill points for your different ships, because it makes the game run smoother and gets people involved more. Because if someone checks out for a bit because one idiot is moving half his forces, that's boring. It's boring. It'll slow things down. It's boring. No one will like it. Don't do it. Oh, I don't care if it makes more sense in a tournament setting, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and also, don't be so quick to apply, standard logic to those Epic games anyway. Investing in a whole bunch of Academy ties may not actually be a good idea for a couple different reasons. PS bids, generic PS bids, I think, can be really strong in Epic, and area effect weapons like assault missiles, etc. There's actually a bunch of reasons why it's not necessarily even a good idea to begin with.
And even one of the things I've found is not just cool that I like, but it's to set up squads. So I usually pick like 4 TIE fighters or 3 X-Wings or B-Wings or Y-Wings or 3 interceptors, but make them all the same pilot skill and fly them as like a unit. They fly together. They have a task. What are they doing? Fly them to go do something. So it's really easy to figure out what maneuvers those guys are doing. If you fly like a giant swarm of TIE fighters, all moving forward at different pilot skills and all, that's going to be a nightmare. But if you even break it out, I think it's one of those things for games. Someone comes over, looks over, and say, "You here, grab, look, you got these 3 X-Wings. This is their dial. This is what they do." And you let them take over those X-Wings, and they run with it, and then they die or not, or who cares? They have fun, and just. But even if you get people that once you know the game, it's like it comes into kind of little squadrons. It becomes like a strategic dance of what you try to do with your ships to kind of place them in a proper fashion. And 1, it speeds things up. 2, it's thematic. And 3, it's just kind of fun. I like it. Easier for people to grab into. Yeah, so right. There's a number of things you can do with Epic that just kind of speed along.
One thing that I like to do with Epic Games with a lot of people, like talking about over 4 players, is designate one guy to sort of call out which pilot skill step you're on. So, start with pilot skill 1, you call out pilot skill 1, and then everybody does their pilot skill 1 maneuvers, and then call out pilot skill 2, and then maybe some guy will say, "Oh, I forgot my one ship." And, he does his maneuver, and then you move on to pilot skill 2, and so on. That way, because sometimes people will do their maneuvers at any given pilot skill step, and then no one will realize that all those maneuvers are done, and it's their turn. We've actually moved on to the next step. It's it's hard to keep track of everything that's going on.
Yeah, I know when we played, I guess the first time I played was when Jim ran it at a convention, a large game like that with, I don't know, 12 people, 8, 9 people. That was very helpful. Obviously, it was the first time I played, but it only took a few turns for everybody to kind of get into that, okay, pilot, like Imperial pilot skill 1s, Republic and pilot skill 1s. I know they're not there, but you get the idea. Just go back and forth so everybody knows what step you're on. And it doesn't take long for people to get that pattern and understand it. And before you know it, even brand new players are ready. They're like, "Oh, it's my turn." And they move, and it starts to speed the game along a lot faster. Because at those big Epic games, the one real drawback is the time. They're eye-catching. They draw people in, and they're great. But if you drag a game like that out to an inordinate amount of time, new players are going to get turned off to it. So you got to try and keep that stuff short.
Even old players.
Yeah. Trust me, it's tough when we start the thing at 6 and we're still going at 9:30 on this game because everybody's got pilot skills and all sorts of upgrade cards with their ships. It's like if we just played generics, if we had at the most given people maybe some munitions or turrets and that sort of thing, and we might have gotten this finished 2 hours earlier. If I had been brand new to the game, I might have been turned off completely with how long it was taking some of those turns to be finished.
And I would even say talk to the people you play with. If it's you and you've got some other guys that want to do Epic and have their Epic ships, talk to them about it. Talk about building generic lists and all this, and pretty much just like straightforward for the first couple times, because you don't want to build the super deadly awesome combo that's just going to crush your opponent. You take all this time to organize and get your forces and the table and everything, and suddenly the other person's like, boo, 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 and 30 minutes is done because the other side crushed you. Like they took like 12 K-Wings with TLTs, twin laser turrets, and you didn't, and suddenly they're like, your Epic ship's dead in like 5 rounds. That's not fun. Like, that's not a good way to build it. So, like, whether it's one person building like 2 evenly balanced generic lists, or you talk to the other person, say, hey, let's just keep it simple for the first couple times, whatever. But like, do that. Just kind of get a few things, because I find that there's a lot to Epic that, one, list building can just crush the game and, make it not fun. And two, there's a lot of strategery involved with where you place and commit your troops and etc. And that is a whole different game. And it might take a little bit of time to get used to the strengths and weaknesses of your Epic ships. And if you play one game or maybe two games, you kind of hold back while your fighter screen screams forward and dies, and then your Epic ship dies. Well, you could say, well, this game sucks, I don't like it. Or you could, I don't know, change your strategy. So
yeah, the thing with Epic games is the time investment and energy investment in that game is pretty big. So if you don't have fun during that game, then people are going to be turned off. It's not like a short 45-minute game of X-Wing. It's going to be a couple of hours probably.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work to, assemble all your minis, get all your cards, build all your lists, then actually go through playing the game. So, you want to be, you kind of want to keep in mind that you do want to have fun, and try to take steps to ensure that you do have fun. One thing that I usually do with any game where you're playing with around 600 points on a standard Epic 6x3 table is introduce even just some basic objectives into the mission, into the scenario that you're playing, rather than just a straight deathmatch, because oftentimes the most efficient way to play those deathmatch games is to cluster your forces pretty tightly together, and sort of like play in formations almost to concentrate your firepower, destroy enemy ships before they have a chance to shoot back, etc. There's a bunch of different reasons why flying in a formation is strong, assuming you're not facing a bunch of assault missiles. But the downside to that is if both sides put all their ships in tight formations and fly more or less at each other, with 600 points on total on the table, the traffic jam is just going to be awful. And you'll spend a ton of time just bumping ships and having just massive collisions that aren't really that fun and are time consuming and just not the game at its best. And if you have even a couple of basic objectives on the table, and this, like, the easiest one is to just make each side take a huge ship and make that worth maybe double the points, or make the mission to destroy the other team's enemy huge ship. That way, the game will spread out a little more as each side tries to destroy the other side's huge ship, and doesn't just cluster everything in one big fur ball.
Now you said cluster, and that makes me think of another really good way to pull in veteran players, even new players. A great way to pull in any player into a type of casual scene. That's Heroes of the Aturi Cluster. And we might talk about it later tonight, we'll see. But it's a fan-made campaign system that is cooperative. So everybody plays one ship, and well, though I've heard of, like, if you're you and your brother and you each play two ships or something, but you play rebels and you're working in a campaign to kind of defeat the Imperial, which is controlled by an AI. We've talked about it before, but one awesome way to pull people in is to talk about the Heroes of the Aturi Cluster. And this is something that's been bounced around the interwebs and whatnot enough that it's probably piqued some people's interest. And if you are willing to kind of go print out all the terrain and the rule books and take the effort to actually read the rules and to try to see if there's interest, I had a lot of people when I first posted about it go, when are we doing this? You talked about this. here's the Terry cluster. When are we going to do this? I really want to try this out. This sounds really cool. And we had probably about 15, 16 people the first night we did it, all at the game store. A lot of them all tournament players, just really trying to try it out. What is this thing? Etc. And it is a really cool thing to try to do. We're going to try to do an interview with the actual creator. Here's the Terry cluster at some other episode, but that is a really good gateway to get people in to casual playing. So I mean, like J-Bot, I know, you tried it out. What do you think, or what do you think of the thoughts on that?
I think in a lot of ways it builds upon one of the things we mentioned earlier, which is it takes effort. If we just said, hey, we're going to show up, we're going to play the Heroes of the Terry cluster, and no one had done anything, we'd just shown up with a PDF printout of the rules, we'd be kind of stuck. So if you really want to build the scene, and it is a great tool for building the scene, the casual scene and anything at your store, you got to put the effort in. I think that's the kind of central message here is take the time to print it out. You don't have to go as far as Jim did with his craftiness on these cards and the work, but you do need to at least make the effort to print the stuff out, pair of scissors, X-Acto knife, something to cut the pieces up, and have something there for people to see and play with, because once you have that, it's easy to draw people in. And every person we've played with is like, wow, this is so much more fun than I ever thought it would have been, whether they're brand new to the game or they've been playing it for years. And it's a great hook. It is a great hook to get people back to that table if they've left, or if it's the first time they've ever played. It's just as easy to explain the rules in a game of the Atari cluster as it is just kind of a one-on-one deathmatch.
Yeah, I think if you have one experienced player running it, especially, that can really streamline the whole Heroes of Atari cluster experience, because probably the hardest thing to understand is how the mission structure works with AI ships coming on at different times, and the even just the AI system, how they decide what maneuvers they do, what they do when they have collisions with obstacles or other ships. Having someone that knows how those things work can really streamline those first few games until other people start picking up on how those things work.
I will say for my craft bits, I posted pictures of the trench run and some of my stuff I've done, in the FHG forums, and I had someone that was impressed. Not only did I have papercraft turrets, but I had exploding papercraft turrets. So once the turrets are blown up, you had like the explosion to put, once you remove the turret. That impressed someone. So don't knock so much the super crafty nonsense.
Oh, I'm not knocking it. It's just there's an effort, and then there's like you put almost too much effort into it. It feels bad sometimes. I do like, oh, this is great, all this effort, and we took an hour to put it up, took an hour to put it down, and then we're not going to play it again for 6 months because it's just like, oh, it's so much effort to put all that stuff out there. It is eye-catching. That trench run it's a lot of work. But if you can get it to work well,
you probably hear the Ewoks in the background here. It's Ewok feeding time. If you hear anything,
lost my train of thought. Oh no, there it is. So basically, the trench run takes a lot of work to put together, but it is massively eye-catching. I mean, it is. People are like, what the heck is that? People that aren't gamers, that are just there wandering around looking at comic books, you can see that Death Star map from across the room because of what Jim's done, and that's great.
Yeah. Heroes of the Turret Cluster works much the same way, and people know about it. X-Wing players who are on the forums at all will probably have seen it and at least looked at it and maybe decided that, maybe no one else would be interested at their game group, but, secretly everyone is, or they don't want to go through trouble printing it out or learning it.
If I wasn't practicing for a regional, I'd probably go ahead and try it. And hey, regionals are almost over, so.
Or there's probably people who think that the AI is too easy to game, and
Right.
is too easy to play against, which is not true. Not
yeah,
true.
Not found.
that is not true. Yeah, when we've gotten, I don't want to dig too deep into it because we might dedicate so much time to it in the future. But every person that I have seen play it, from the tournament guys to the guys who do really well in tournaments, down to just the brand new guys, are all have that thought when they first get to it. Oh, it's an AI. Give me a few turns and I'll know exactly what it's doing. And then they get blown up and they're like, what did I do wrong? I don't understand. Why did it make that move? It doesn't make any sense. And then you end up right in front of it and get shot to pieces. And it is very well made. I know we've said this, and it's surprising. And even tournament heavy people who were just there for that hard strategy, hard, numbers game, they tend to enjoy it too. It catches them by surprise. And that's really what all this is about, is that it's not us against them. It's not casual against tournament. It's more, this is another way to enjoy the game, and you guys are welcome too. Come on in, have a play, and see that it's actually fun every once in a while to be on the same side and fist pump when Jim kills his stupid phantom that he's been yelling about for weeks. I mean, it was a celebration. But you get that because it's friendly, and that's the environment that you fostered. If you foster a very kind of hardcore environment, that's what you're going to get. Foster that openness, that friendship, and the enjoyment of it, and you're going to find a lot more people come into the store every week, even if they're just there to watch and talk. That's great.
Yeah, I think that I'm probably going to try to start up a Heroes of Atari Cluster group here in New York, probably after I'm done with the Custom Card League. So probably, that's sometime in July. But
it's so fun. I've had problems because I've tried to get so many different people, because what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to run these particular missions and kind of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 of the storyline. But I've had to run so many tier 1 missions of getting new people sucked into it that my guy is kind of a bit overpowered for the early matches again. I've had to start a second character just to kind of be the same power levels of new players. And if you can find dedicated people, it's a blast. It's so much fun. So that Heroes of the Atari Cluster is another thing you can do to get experienced players to or new players into the game. And in fact, it's so easy for new players, because if you have enough, for me, I've been playing since Wave 1. I've got so many ships. Right. I have got enough TIE fighters and interceptors and stuff for tonight. And someone wants to borrow an X-Wing. Yeah, here's one X-Wing. Go for it.
That's all you really need.
And right, that if you really want to get into the Heroes of the Atari Cluster, if you can't even borrow your one ship, you buy one blister. And you're good to go. So it's easy for new people to kind of get involved. But I think there's another option for people to try is things like fur balls, which are still kind of competitive but different. So there's this kind of people like tournaments, and I kind of even talked before about what would you do if let's say you planned it ahead and you had uniques. There's only one unique in the entire tournament, so only one person can get the Emperor or Fell or Vader. And you develop some sort of system with that. Or you do fur balls where everybody gets 35 points in a small base ship, and you can run. And I know Nova Open or a few of these other tournaments have run these, and they kind of do some big events. And they kind of throw out these upgrades where there's these chits, an upgrade chit. You don't know what the upgrade is until you throw over it and pull out a card. It might be heavy laser cannon. Well, your TIE fighter can't actually hold a heavy laser cannon, but who cares? It's strapped to your TIE fighter. You can now shoot a heavy laser cannon from your main guns, and just kind of do these fur balls that are kind of crazy. Ooh, stealth device, and ooh, I've got another thing added on, like engine upgrade. I've got 2 modifications. I don't care. But doing all these weird little furball rules and stuff to kind of do this competitive yet different type of
I call this type of scenario a arcade style scenario, meaning that it uses all the X-Wing, rules and ships, but the game itself isn't really set in a Star Wars universe setting, per se. It's more like you're using it all in a game that just doesn't fit thematically. Theme has no bearing in this game, these types of games.
Right. Like, actually, what was interesting was there's Flames of War is a World War II miniatures game, and World of Tanks is an online computer game, and they kind of were able to actually merge the two, at least in a little setting where you can kind of come up with everybody gets one tank and they can move around the board and shoot at other people. As soon as they're blown up, they can kind of respawn at the spawning point, and you can kind of like play like a simplistic version of the game rules in a kind of quote arcade setting end quote to kind of play the same game but kind of a different format. Whether you don't have to do respawns or whatnot, but there's a lot of little weird ways you can play and encourage people to kind of try a competitive environment that's not a 100-point deathmatch.
Right. Not there's overlap between, different types of games and a competitive play style. You can play any mission with a competitive attitude. Including games that we are,
Candyland.
Here.
I will dominate.
Exactly. I mean, we call these categories of games casual, but it's really not a great term because it's just the best one that we have.
I want to win.
Yeah,
I want to win no matter what the game, but
exactly.
It's not death. Yeah, yeah. So I think there's a lot of different ways you can play competitive, and it might even be the gateway for people to try. Like, what if you're able to charge $1 or $2 for people to try Furball, or get the store to commit to something and give away some little prizes, store credit or something to people who play this Furball. Just a one-off thing, just kind of to wean them away from 100-point deathmatch around the same 6 rocks, just to kind of like get something different. So I think that could be a start.
You could definitely hand out pilot cards that you have extras of. That might be one thing
Yeah.
that you could even do yourself. Like I don't need 3 Wedge Antilles cards, but someone might want one.
Right. So I think overall, I think there's a lot of things you can do, but I think we just kind of rambled on for a while about what you can do to kind of build the casual X-Wing scene in your area. Because if you're a casual player and you want to play, it could be challenging to really get games in, because most people out there at your local store are the ones that are dedicated to the tournament scene. But there might be people who have been kind of turned away by the tournament scene, or who might be interested in something different after the tournament scene is over. Or there's a lot of things you just kind of need to be there and be the kind of go-to guy to always throw out there. Hey, what about? To kind of draw these people out to try a few different things. And whether it's new players, experienced players, there's a lot of really cool things to kind of build that attitude.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there. And I guess just to kind of sum up, I think the things for me is get your store to support it. I know our local store, I don't know that he was necessarily hesitant at first, but I don't think he realized how big it was going to become. And our 2 little shells of X-Wing became a massive whole section of X-Wing. And when he sees that, he gets behind it. I promise you, if you start to build this community, same thing's going to happen there, and your store owners are going to get behind it. So get them on board early, and they'll start to support you more than you thought. And obviously, the second part of that is be dedicated to it. This can't just be a kind of a whim that you do every couple of weeks. It needs to be there all the time, be visible, be seen, and people will start to rely on it and trust that you'll be there. And before you know it, they'll be there all the time, and you can take a day off. You can take a week off, and it won't fall apart on you. And I know for me personally, I want to hear what other people have, ideas. I want to see what some of the other folks out there in these large communities have as ideas to help, because maybe we're missing some stuff too, and could push those magic guys back out of our section and get a couple more tables in there, because I don't like how they're edging in on my territory. I promise you that much.
It's true, because we have a Facebook group. So Shuttle Tydirium podcast is our Facebook group, and we've got some dedicated people that are on there. We're posting a lot of people joining. And it is pretty cool, and I find myself with free time at work to respond to people, and I'll ask captain's questions. So if you like or want to respond, please go ahead and join the Facebook group. I think one of us has to actually go ahead and approve your joining, but it shouldn't take too long. And give us your ideas, or give us an email or on the FFG thread about this episode. But we would love to hear more, or if anyone else out there wants to hear it. We want to help build the casual scene in everyone's area, so that more people try it out and don't just dismiss it, even if it's Vassal or at your local store. We want to see more casual games.
Yeah, and it's this is how you get your casual games in, really. I mean, if you really want to play casual X-Wing, this is the best way to set yourself up to be able to play those games on a regular basis.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just really hard to, it's hard to get like a casual pickup game, because you would have to, just randomly run into somebody that is interested in the same sort of game that you are, and then you have to figure out, what kind of game you're playing, and it's easier. It's clearly easier just to play on the, play a 100-point deathmatch, because everybody knows about it already and has lists ready for it and expects to be playing those. Whereas you need a little groundwork to be able to, get a casual game in on a regular basis.
Yes, yeah. Oh, I heard of this Mission 1. Who wants to try it with me? Who's heard it on the Shuttle Tydirium podcast or on the FFG forums? Or I think it'd be kind of cool, and let's try it out. But I think for our last bit of advice, the most important advice, we're going to go to Jake and see what he's got to give us.
I think you guys have kind of hit all the topics there, and I think there's nothing left for the chief engineer here.
Excellent. All right. J-Bot, anything there?
No, all good on this side.
He's not angry. Restraining bolt.
No. I got all my anger. I got all my anger out. Although that gonk droid's been eyeing me really badly.
Yeah. Give him what's for. It's okay. What was that, Phil?
Nothing.
All right. So I think we should go ahead and call it quits here. We're moving up into our destination. We do have to get the Ewok pesticide prepared for our landing. So once again, this is episode 6. Is it already? Gosh, I have to admit it's weird. Weird time dissociation when we record, and then it takes 2 weeks for the episode to get up.
Because episode 4 just released as we're recording this. So we're recording this on the Thursday after episode 4 went up. So there's a weird time lag for us.
But I will say that I have been in contact with the guy who created Heroes of the Turi cluster, and I have asked questions about, is he involved in updates? Will there be more? What's going on? Is there expansions? Is he going to be doing a Imperial version? All sorts of questions, and I got response. So let me just kind of give these updates. He's working on a version 0.8 update, 0.8. And one thing he wants to do is split the rulebook into separate campaign missions and rulebook documents, so that you've got the missions in one section and the rulebooks in another, just for ease of use, which is pretty cool. He also wants to rewrite how assists work. And I think there's some information that's about ionizing and a few things like that. There's a few other AI logic references, a few mission tweaks, but overall, he's really working on a version 0.8. There's some people on the FFG forums working on the Imperial version of things, and he said that they've hit on some ideas and are trying to challenges, etc. By the time he gets around to it, these guys might actually have come up with a better solution. So please go to the FFG forums and work on the Imperial campaign for Heroes of the Aturi Cluster, or Villains of the Aturi Cluster.
Villains of the Aturi Cluster, yeah.
So these are just a few things that I've kind of been in conversations with, but we really do want to do an interview and get him involved. So I'll go ahead and just kind of throw that out there.
Yeah, I think that when we do a full review of Heroes of the Aturi Cluster, I think it's probably going to go over 2 or 3 podcasts, because there's quite a bit to discuss there.
So
I think.
Much.
Mm-hmm. And if we're going to interview the guys, that's probably going to be a podcast in itself.
Yeah. So I just want to throw out that he's actually trying to work on really FAQs and maybe new ships like the TIE Defender new rules and etc. And he's really focused on kind of getting that stuff done, and that's taking so much of his attention. But we'll see what new stuff comes on. If you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it, and I do want to talk more about this topic in future episodes because it's just so freaking awesome.
Yeah, we're having a lot of fun. I'm playing through with Jake, and we look forward to our games quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. All right, so with that, I think we can go ahead and finish this particular episode. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. I greatly appreciate it, and I hope we hear you for the next episode.